You're tuned in to Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors podcast. Waterfowl hunting and conservation is our passion. We cover everything outdoors, from the blind to the banks. Come along with us as we hunt and fish our public land reserves and bayous throughout Sportsman's Paradise. Tune in for interesting interviews and takes from much of the industry's most intriguing outdoor companies, content creators, guides, and historians as we discuss various topics as they pertain to our pursuit of waterfowl and everything outdoors. This is Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now here's your host, Jacob Robery.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to an all-new episode of Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Robery, and guys, it is great, as always, to have y'all back with us for another episode. Man, we are rolling right along as we get ready to head into waterfowl season down here in Louisiana. And we're going to take you guys along for the ride with us this season and on these new episodes as we are now in season 9 of the podcast. So first of all, I want to welcome out all of you to the show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to listen to a simple coonass from South Louisiana, talk a little bit about waterfowl hunting and my passion, a little bit about my Cajun heritage, and also hear the stories of our unique guests that we bring to the show. And tonight is no different, guys. We have a guest on the show that I'm excited to introduce all of you to. He is actually a longtime friend of mine. And this is a gentleman that I grew up, in my small town. You guys that follow us on the show have heard me talk about the Evangeline Parish, little parish, and the small town of Ville Platte, Louisiana, where I grew up at, kind of cut my teeth in the outdoors with my family, my grandfathers, my great uncles, my father. Grew up in an outdoor hunting family and a very rich Cajun cultural family. And this gentleman that I'm going to introduce you to tonight, he is from the same hometown that I grew up in, and he and I actually did some hunting together with some other friends of ours. We'll probably share a few stories on that tonight. But we're going to be talking tonight, moving down the interstate from Louisiana over to Southeast Texas, because he has not only experienced waterfowl hunting in Louisiana, but he has been living in Southeast Texas now for the last several years, and he has some experience in Southeast Texas when it comes to duck hunting, waterfowl hunting, some of their traditions down in that area, which is a completely different flyway than we are here in Louisiana. And we're going to kind of pick his brain tonight. We're going to tell him, or let him tell us, I should say, a little bit of, coming up in Louisiana and eventually making that move over to Texas, and kind of how was that shift when it came to waterfowl hunting? What did he learn? What does he like about, Texas? And kind of what a little bit about what, Southeast Texas waterfowl hunting is about. So I'm excited. Like I said, this is going to be an interesting episode, guys. We are going to bring my good friend John Johnson on the show with us, and we are going to bring him in right now and introduce him and let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about himself and waterfowl hunting in Texas. So let's get started. Let's get John in with us. John, what is going on, brother?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Dude, life, man. We are grinding right now. Family and work and everything else that you are involved in, I'm pretty sure right now.
Absolutely, man. I can relate to all of that. So. Good.
Yep. I mean, everybody, we're at that age, John. Well, we're not too far from the same age, and we kind of at that point in our lives. We got a couple of kids that are a little older now. We kind of almost got them out of the house, and then we still got a couple of younger ones that are hanging around, and we got a few more years, but we're in the home stretch, John.
That's right. It's kind of a weird deal, right?
It is, man. It's kind of a weird deal because like my son Jackson, he's 17, or he'll be 17 in January. It's kind of weird. I've hunted with him my whole life, pretty much, or his whole life, I should say. And now he don't want to hang out with dad anymore, John. He wants to do his own thing now. So yeah. I'm kind of having an empty nest type feeling, I guess you could say, now with the whole hunting and scouting before the season, all that type of stuff. Something I hadn't done in quite a while.
Yeah, same here, man. My daughter's older now. Like I was telling you, she's in college, but my son's, he's in it. He's in it 100%. But
Yeah,
he's 15 now, so who knows,
well,
right? He's got a girlfriend and all that, so that can all change real quick.
dude, when those girls come into play, it's a totally different deal. Jackson's been dating one now. His little girlfriend, they've been dating for about a year and a half, and I know exactly. Were we that different, John? Were we like that at that age?
Probably. we always want to say no, right? But we probably were.
We probably were.
Yeah.
Well, John, hey, look, first of all, before we get too sidetracked, I want to thank you for taking time to come on with us tonight. You and I have actually talked about this for quite some time. We run, stuff by each other when it comes to duck hunting.
Mhm.
But if you don't mind, introduce yourself if we haven't already done so. Tell the listeners kind of where you're from, where you grew up, and kind of your travel, where it took you, if you don't mind.
Okay, my name's John Johnson, from Ville Platte, Louisiana. I left Ville Platte in 2001. I joined the Air Force after graduating high school and went active duty and thought I was going to be stationed in the South. And they sent me far north. They sent me to Alaska. So definitely an eye-opening experience. So did some duck hunting up there, quite a bit different. Everything's brown. There's no plumage come duck season, right? So you're just shooting at brown birds, and so they say if it's brown, it's down, and that's kind of how we did it.
Dude, I have to say Alaska's on my bucket list. And honestly, I didn't know because you and I, well, I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit in a second, but we hunted obviously from the same hometown we grew up in. We had some common friends. We hunted together. But I didn't know that time frame where you went into the military and then where you got stationed. I didn't really know all that. So you were in Alaska, you saying that's on my bucket list, man, for waterfowl hunting. Without going too far ahead, tell me a little bit about Alaska and waterfowl hunting. Was that what you thought it would be, or was it, maybe a letdown?
No, it's absolutely what you think it would be. There's birds everywhere. I was stationed in Fairbanks, Alaska, which is roughly in the middle of the state. And if you can think of marshes, they have tundra there, right? It's similar to the marshes down here, but it's tundra. And so come, I guess, spring, they call it spring breakup. So all the snow starts to melt and it starts flooding all this tundra and all these pastures and all these floodways. And man, it's ducks everywhere. So you can imagine an 18-year-old diehard duck hunter from South Louisiana moves to Alaska, and you see in mallards and pintails and canvasbacks on the side of the road in these flooded ditches. It kind of gets you going, right?
I couldn't even imagine, John.
That's right. Yeah.
That has to be a pretty amazing thing. Now, when you hear Alaska, you hear sea duck hunting. That's because what you mentioned just now, that's puddle ducks. It sounds
Mine's
like
all puddle ducks.
What's that?
All puddle ducks. No divers.
No divers. So
in my experience, right? So I'm sure it's there, right? But where I was at in Central Alaska, North Pole, Fairbanks area, it was all well, I'll say canvasbacks. So you had some canvasbacks, you had a few divers, but for the most part, we were shooting puddle ducks.
Really? Yeah, because every time they show Alaska duck hunting on TV, you see all the videos of they sitting on big rocks, out in the Barren Sea. They're doing sea duck type hunting, that type of stuff. And that's kind of what I always said. Well, I want to go to Alaska to shoot an eider or a harlequin or something like that you just don't see anywhere else down in the lower portions of the flyway. So what you're saying there is you had a lot of opportunity for puddle ducks just like you would hunt here.
Yeah, because I was so far inland, man. The coast is, Alaska's huge. You imagine Texas is big. Alaska's like several of Texas, right? So to get to the coast, you're looking at a full day's trip. 8 hours, 6, 8 hours, 10 hours, depending on where you're going. And so I just, I was a 18-year-old kid on a very limited budget. I had to go in my backyard and see what they had out, see what they had to offer in my backyard. So it wasn't a whole lot of traveling for me at that time.
Yeah, obviously, man. Yeah, and the military, how long did you serve in the military, John? How long were you?
I did 3.5 years active duty, and then I got out to finish my degree at Lafayette. And I was actually stationed in Belle Chase at the Navy base there in the Air National Guard. So I actually retire next month or December, coming up into November. Yeah, next month. December. Man, I'm losing track of my months. But in December, I'll retire from the Texas Air National Guard. So
That's awesome,
man. It's been 21 years, 22 years.
God, that's crazy how time flies. And Fred, thank you for your service, John. From all of us that listen, I know that people want to thank you for your service and what y'all do to defend this country, man, especially in these times that we're in nowadays. But dude, time flies, man. I mean, I remember the little John that was a couple of years younger than me growing up in Ville Platte, and kind of I'll let you kind of elaborate on that, John. So I didn't want to. I know we got into the Alaska thing, but go ahead and explain kind of where your journey took you,
man. So you went to Sacred Heart. I went to Ville Platte High. We were always rivals, right?
That's right.
So I'm 42 now. I think you said you're what, 46 or so?
46.
Yeah, my sister's closer to your age, and so we had some of the similar friend group, Troy Fontenot and Jacob Swallow and those guys. It's really where you and I kind of came together at when I got back from the military. But yeah, man, I went to Ville Platte High. I grew up hunting and fishing and mostly squirrel hunting, right? That's what we do. I didn't start duck hunting until I was probably 12 years old, and that was usually at Thistleway, shooting wood ducks in the bayou, right? Wherever you can find a bayou, you try to find some wood ducks to shoot. That's kind of how most of us start off down there, at least. And once I got my driver's license, man, I hit the road with the boat, and we started hunting Red River, Three Rivers, all the reserves, all the WMAs out there. Anywhere we can find ducks, we were going kind of chase them, right? So me and
we were bouncing around, man. Spring Bayou, all those there. We had some epic hunts, man. I know together we had a couple of really good hunts back in the day,
Back when they had greenheads everywhere.
Boy, John, you hear all the guys talk about the good old days, and now some of these guys coming up now, they're like, well, you hear them talk about the good old days, and there was just ducks everywhere. What's your thoughts when you hear guys say that now? Were there really ducks everywhere like they say? Because look, we didn't come up in the 70s, and I was 80s with my grandfather, my dad, them. But I'm talking about when you and I got to know each other through our friends, that we're talking about. That was probably what, late 90s, early 2000s, maybe? You said you got out of the military.
Early 2000s. I came back in 2005.
Okay, so early 2000s. What was duck hunting from what you remember when we were hunting back then? What do you remember it as?
So in high school, late 90s, right? So high school ducks, they were, to me, that was the time to hunt. They just had ducks everywhere, man. You can hunt at Spring Bayou with a guy 100 yards away. You can get aggravated, because he's setting up right by you, and you would still kill a bunch of ducks. I mean, we would go out hunt, and we were shooting limits of teal, mallards. We had one year it was widgeon. The widgeon were everywhere. We were shooting tons of widgeon. They were falling in the boat blind. You remember Cody Smith and Jacob and all those guys we were all hunting with? I mean,
so Cody Smith's my cousin. He is actually my second cousin. Yeah, our first cousin, I should say. Him and my mom, his mom and my mom are sisters. Sorry, I got it all mixed up, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you set up. I mean, you've been to Spring Bayou. They have blinds everywhere, right? Everybody's trying to get there. But you would shoot ducks, man. It was crazy, and I tell my son that today, and he can't believe it because it's just not the same. It's just not. And and then so I left, right? Went to Alaska, came back. When I came back, we had you and I, we had a couple good hunts, at Spring Bayou again and some of the other public places in central Louisiana. And then it just steady dropped off, man. And just now you go for one or two birds and I'm happy. 2 or 3 birds, that's a good hunt for us.
Yeah, I tell people, I say, back in the day, and you hear guys say this, John, and it's like back in the day, like if we didn't come out with a limit, you were pissed. It was a bad day for us, We were mad. We were those guys, and we talk about this quite a bit too, but it was also different times, not only with the ducks, but the technology was not there like it is nowadays. Hell, we barely had cell phones, at one point. And then you talk about that. Talk a little bit about like the scouting back then, kind of the stuff we had to go through so that people could honestly understand what that was like to paint a picture for them.
Yeah, if you didn't put boots on the ground back then, it's a shot in the dark. You had to put boots on the ground. If you weren't out there scouting, you might as well spin the wheel and hunt somewhere. It's just, if you're going to find birds, you had to have been there, right? It wasn't e-scouting, and trust me, I e-scout like it ain't nobody's business today.
Oh yeah.
But back then, man, you had to put your time in, and of course we had more time, right? I wasn't, we're in high school or right after high school, you had more time, and so we would go out there and spend the weekend before duck season, a couple weekends before duck season, finding the water, finding where you can launch, right? They had all the grass was, taking over some of these spots, and you can see if you couldn't always get to where you wanted to go, right? This is before Go Devils and Surface
Yeah.
Truck, all that
I
stuff.
mean, they had long tails maybe at that time, but there was few
Yeah,
guys you knew that had that,
that's right. And they didn't have many of them. So,
No, they
but
didn't.
yeah,
And us at that age, we were all. You were coming out of the military. I was coming out of college in that time frame. I was just out of college. I mean, we didn't have the budget to be buying it
no,
if they even did have access to be
absolutely
able to
not.
go out there. So,
That's
but
right.
yeah, it was truly different, man. It just was. But boy, you look back at it now, John, and I mean, how much do you appreciate those days?
Oh, it's made us who we are, right? And so I try to teach my son the exact same way. You have to pay your dues. Like we're on a lease now. We're on a really nice big ranch in Southeast Texas. But man, the first few years of him coming with me, he was in his knees in the mud, and wondering if he's going to be able to make it out. It was tough hunting. Some of the public spots down here, South Texas and Southeast Texas, you're gonna put your work in. You're not just gonna go in there and enjoy your hunt, if you will. You're gonna have to work for it,
You're
and you
gonna
might
work for
you
it.
might scratch. You might not even pull the trigger. But I wanted him to see that. I wanted him to experience that before we went to a lease where you have better opportunity, where it's less crowded and all that. You got to pay your dues, man, because it's called hunting for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's well said, I think. And I think I did a lot of the same with my son and my youngest one I'm doing now. John, they look at me and they say, man, you 46 years old. What the hell are you still doing hunting public land? And look, I could go buy a lease or I could go, join a lease. And I may end up doing that. I'm not going to say I'll never get into a lease because, hey, we're getting older, John. It's a little tougher
It
nowadays.
is.
You get those mornings you wake up and you're like, man, I really don't want to. I don't want to, fight public land hunting and go out there
Mhm.
and try to fight that fight. But I feel it's important for my kids, like you said, to kind of know, hey, before before you can take this step, you need to kind of understand what the average person goes through if you're really gonna do this for a lifelong hobby or whatever you want to call it.
That's right.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's just our general as dads, as fathers, as parents. You just want to try to teach your kids some of those morals and those lessons that you learned, and then hopefully you pass on a fraction of that to them, and then it continues to carry on. So yeah, man, I think you did it right. I think that's awesome that you did it that way. And in this episode, the reason we wanted to get together for this, John, is because tonight, with you coming from Louisiana, we have a little bit of a picture now of where you came from, growing up in Louisiana, kind of what your hunting, experiences were here in Louisiana. But now you're a resident of the great state of Texas, of
That's
the
right.
Lone Star State, and you actually came from the Mississippi Flyway. And as a waterfowl hunter, you shifted flyways now, being in Texas where you are.
That's
And we're
right.
going to focus a little bit on this episode, man. I want you to talk and share your knowledge of what you've learned about waterfowl hunting in Southeast Texas. And I'd like to maybe kind of lead into it with how did you end up in Texas? Let's start there.
Yeah. So growing up in the Ville Platte area, Lafayette area, all my hunting was, woods, lakes, a little bit of marshes, and around Lake Charles and all that stuff. Not a whole lot, but mostly woods and lakes, boats. Right, we hunt out of a boat blind. So coming over to Texas, I'm thinking same thing. Right, it ain't that far down the road. Man, it's you can do it. You can definitely do it, but it's different. Um, and so I don't, it took me a while to understand what I was getting into. I didn't even realize the flyway was changing. That we're kind of on the edge, right? There's a little
You
blend.
are.
There's a little blend of the Mississippi flyway where I'm at. I'm in the Houston area, and so you still see a lot of the same ducks and stuff. But the way you hunt, to me, is quite a bit different. It's a lot more leg work, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about this. I want to ask you this kind of as far as the regional overview of Southeast Texas when we're talking about terrain coming from Louisiana. So rice fields, coastal marsh, any kind of bay hunting, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Paint a picture for the listeners in those areas? Like what area are you hunting specifically? I guess a general area, and then kind of what's the terrain like as compared to what you were used to here in Louisiana?
Yeah, so down here, in my experience, I'm sure, I don't want people coming on here afterwards with comments saying, "Oh, this, that, and the other," right? This is my experience. And
Correct.
so in the middle coast, call it, between say Port O'Connor to through Matagorda to San Luis Pass to Galveston area, Anahuac area, you're gonna be more coastal marshes, obviously, and bays, right? And so if you think about the bays here, you're not going to get the big muddy bays. You're going to have them, but you're not going to get the big muddy bays like you do back home in Louisiana. You're going to see a lot of oyster reef here. You're going to see a lot of sand here, hard sand bottoms, sandbars everywhere. I've learned the hard way on multiple occasions that you have to watch those sandbars because they will come out of nowhere and get you. It doesn't matter what kind of boat you got. Sand is like concrete. And so just learning the terrain here it's a learning curve, right? And so you find these pockets of these little pockets of water right through the marshes, and you just set up in there and marsh hunt. There's a lot of hiding in the grass. You build your own blind, if you will, hiding in the grass. Bring panel blinds if you want. But for me and my son, we pack as light as possible because you got to carry a lot of this stuff quite a ways, right? So you're parking your boat, then you're getting out and you're walking in. If you go to some of the WMAs, Texas is a bit different from Louisiana. You can't just show up there at 4 o'clock in the morning and pick a spot, right? A lot of the local WMAs here, like Justinhurst, Mad Island, even Anahuac, the federal one, is kind of a lottery system. But as long as you get there in time, they'll hand you a number, and it gives you a place in line, if you will. So when you get your number, you go to the check station. The biologist typically will come up to the check station, put all the numbers in a bucket. He'll say, "Hey, gentlemen, we got 40, 50 hunters today, or 35 hunters today." And you look at your number, and you're like, "Okay, I'm 34, right?" But it doesn't mean you're the 34th pick. He puts them all in a bucket,
Yeah.
shuffles them up, and he starts hanging them on a board.
Damn.
And so wherever you get, whatever number you get, right, you could be the first pick. And if you've been doing your work and scouting out a little bit, you might get a good spot to hunt. But if you're the last pick, you might just go home, right? Because there ain't no good spots left to pick from.
Yeah, so it's like a draft system, is what you're saying. Which I've actually heard guys talk about that, saying that, hey, in Louisiana, we need to go to some sort of a draft or a lottery type system when it comes to our WMAs. There's guys that have that opinion on that because of the pressure that we get in Louisiana on our wildlife management area. So what you're saying is that in Texas, that's the wildlife management areas, or is it also like the national refuges as well?
Well, so first, they're not all going to be like this, right? So it's usually just the designated ones that are like this. And I'm only have my experience from this, southern coastal region.
Correct.
All the other areas, I can't speak on them very well. I know there's a few up on towards Tyler and all that you can just go in, right, and kind of like back home. Get there early and find your own spot. But these local ones down here on the coast near Houston, it's more of a lottery. And some people like it, some people hate it. And I can see both sides of it. I actually prefer it as an older guy that doesn't want to wake up, at the butt crack of dawn and go get in line and all that and get my first spot. But some people hate it, man. They say it's not fair. It should be first come, first serve. And I see it both ways, right? Because you and I, that's what we did. And you're probably still doing that, right?
Still doing it.
But I personally like it.
So everybody shows up like at what time? When you say everybody shows up, draws a number, is it a 4 a.m. type deal?
Yeah, so usually I've seen kids get there the night before. The very first time I experienced this, I got there the night before because I was reading online and everybody said, "Hey man, if you don't get there early, you might be so far in the line, so far back in the line, they might run out of numbers, right? Before you get there. Then you got to turn around and go home." And a lot of the places here, you're driving an hour and a half to 2 hours if you live anywhere where I live at, right? Yeah. And so I wanted to make sure I had a number, so I got there early. I was the number 2 truck in line, but I was like the 15th pick. I was like, man, I did all that for nothing, So I learned my lesson, but that's what you got to do, right? You got to pay your dues, and I'm a big believer.
It's public. It's still public,
You got to pay your dues, and so anyhow, 4:30 rolls around. The biologist gets to the gate, opens the gate up, and he starts handing numbers. You pull up to him, he gives you a number, and then you go get in line, and I don't know, roughly 4:45, 5 o'clock, he pulls up at the check station, shuffles all your numbers around, kind of gives you a daily briefing for that day. And then there's a map. There's typically like a map of all the hunting locations. They'll have names like green wing, rattlesnake, whatever, a bunch of different names. And if you hunt the area a lot, you learn obviously the WMA, right? And
yeah.
so
now is it marsh ponds, like the names? Is it like a particular marsh pond?
yeah,
or
they call them impoundments. And so
impoundments? Okay.
yeah, they'll call them impoundments. You'll have like call it green wing. It might be just for youth only. You call it green wing A, and it could be 5 or 10 acres. And if you have a youth with you, you go to that one, and that's it. And then the next guy, if he calls green wing B or whatever, he'll go another 500 or 600 yards over, and he'll hunt that spot. And so all these impoundments have markers in them, and you just got to hunt within that 30 to 40 yard radius from those markers, and hopefully you picked a good spot. It could be cow pastures with flooded ponds in them. It could be marshes. It could be plowed up ag fields, that have flooded. So it's pretty cool, actually.
It sounds cool, man. That's fascinating to me because I've never experienced anything like that of that type of sort. The closest thing I've experienced to a lottery system would be down here in South Louisiana hunting, Sherbin management area where we have a camp at on the Chaffalaya River. You had South Form, and you may have heard that before. You may have even hunted it. But South Forum was kind of like that. It was a Ducks Unlimited funded project that was part of Sherbin management area. You show up at 4 a.m. and they draw golf balls, kind of like what it was. They had 10 blinds, whatever it was, and you would draw. So that's the only experience I've ever had with a draw, other than like where we grew up in Evangeline Parish, Miller's Lake. If you remember Miller's Lake,
get your peel.
You had a peel, you had a draw, that type of stuff. But that was a duck club, So, man, that's really fascinating to me. Now, it sounds like Texas is really got that together. The way that system works pretty well. Now, you said some guys don't like it. Why? What's some of the pros and some of the cons of that, in your opinion?
Well, I'll say so. The pros for me, it's very well organized. You wake up in the morning. If you get there at the right time, you're likely going to get a spot to hunt. It may not be your best favorite spot, but you're going to get a spot to hunt. That's your spot. You have several acres to hunt, right? You don't have to worry about Joe Blow coming right next to you within 50 yards. You having this confrontation or whatever. You know how that goes, and it's a pissing contest of who's going to hunt where. So to me, especially with my young son at the time, I felt more organized and in a safer environment. It wasn't
absolutely
the rush of public land hunting like you experienced, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the cons to that is you might not get a good spot, right? So people who advocate for not having a lottery, they want to be on a first come first served basis because they've done the work. They feel like if I've done the work and I get there first, as a public land hunter, I should get that spot. And I see that side too. I just personally prefer the lottery, the draw system.
Yeah.
But the one thing, Jacob, you'll see here in my experience, you can almost put the duck call away. In these kinds of WMAs, there's so much because there's a lot of people. There's so much pressure that it's mostly pass shooting. And so once in a while, you might get some fresh birds that'll work a little bit, but you have to be prepared to pass shoot because you're not going to see birds working like at Miller's or Spring Bayou or Sherbin and all that. They're just not going to do that. Not as well, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you think with the way that's set up, John, that with everybody kind of being spread out, having their own little area designated to them, that you wouldn't have maybe those birds as wary as you would in an area where, hey, being honest with you now, everybody knows if you hunt public, you set up here and you got a group of guys come set up 100 yards away from you. They don't give a rat's ass if you there. They come and set up on the side of you, and you might have another group 200 yards away. So you would think that those, that would be a better situation for you in the way y'all have it set up in, Texas there. But maybe that's not the case, like you said, a lot of pass shooting,
Yeah, no, man. I had to, growing up at, before I left Louisiana, I had joined Miller's, and spent a few seasons at Miller's, and I hunted with, friends at Miller's for quite a while. And to me, you can work some ducks at Miller's. You can work them, if you call them right and stuff, you can work them. And so coming here, I kind of thought the same thing. Well, I'm sitting here trying to work ducks, and they're just like, "Hey, man, shoot me the bird," and they just moving on, you know. So, and then you can see other people hunting the impoundment over what I would consider sky busting. I'm like, man, and I'm trying to teach my son, hey, man, we're not going to do that. Like, I know you
Yeah.
want to pull the trigger because you're a new young hunter, but we're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
And then after, half the season, I'm thinking they might be onto something here because I'm sitting here trying to work these ducks properly, which I still believe that's the correct way to do it. But man, if everybody's pass shooting around me, then we're missing opportunities.
You got to take shots.
And then you got to start figuring out, okay, if it's within 40, we're going to go for it. Or if they do one pass, you better take it. Sometimes you'll get a pass, right? They'll do a pass. Well, back home, we want to get them passing, coming close.
You want them feet down, locked up back home, you know?
Well, over here, if they do a pass, you're lucky if they'll do a second or third. So you better consider taking a shot at them when you can, because chances are good those suckers are going to fly away.
That's interesting, man. I love the system setup you talking about there, but that does surprise me with the wing shooting, pass shooting, the birds being more wary, you know? Now, we're talking about birds, John. Let's talk about that because, like we said, we're coming from the Mississippi Flyway in Louisiana to technically the Central Flyway, but you talked about a blend there because you are on that borderline. It's a fine line there. So when we're talking about species and you hear Texas, especially East Texas hunting, a lot of times I hear, stuff like a lot of diver ducks, a lot of redheads Texas is known for. You get widgeon. So let's talk a little bit about the species that you have seen through the years in your time in Texas.
Well, I killed my first redhead here in towards Rockport area, Rockport, Texas, towards the lower coast. Tons of redheads, man. Tons and tons of redheads. I couldn't believe it. A lot of pintails. I've yet to kill a bull sprig in my 30 years of duck hunting. Can you imagine that?
That's crazy, man. I've killed. Honestly, I think I've had 2 that I've killed. One of them I shot, and I ended up giving it to a friend of mine because he wanted a pintail so bad. And now, years later, I regret it. But yeah, I've had 2, I think. Have you ever got a band, John?
I've got 2 bands.
I'm 0. 46 years old, I have 0 bands, and all the time I've been waterfowl hunting, it is not in the cards for me. For
such a letdown, right? Just like, come on, man.
Dude, I want one so bad. I've been on hunts where guys have had one. I even had a pintail. You're talking about pintail. I hunted with a couple of buddies of mine, and we had a friend of ours. It was one of those situations. You young, you hunting together, and they came in on us, pulled up, shot. I'm 99% positive I shot the bird. My buddy was, the minute he pulled the trigger, he was like, I shot it. I shot that one. I shot that one. I couldn't break his heart. I let him have it. And my other buddy still jokes about that to this day. He's like, oh, that son of a bitch. He's like, I know you killed it. I saw. I didn't even shoot, And I say, that could have been the one that got away for me right there. And then a couple of years ago, I had a situation where I was going to hunt a hole on public land, and I had a friend of mine that I still hunt with to this day, and he said, man, he says, you beat me too, in line to get that hole, and I said, I tell you what, I said it was the end of the season. I said, I tell you what, man, I know you want to hunt it. I said, go ahead, I've hunted it many times. I said, you go hunt it, and I said, I'll take Jackson. We'll go to another hole. Well, we hear some shooting towards that area. A little later, John, I see my phone buzzing on. I look at it. And he's like, man, I got to thank you. He said, had a group of blue-winged teal come in. I shot it. He said, if blue-winged teal was banded. I said, son of a gun. He's like, bro, he said, that would have probably been a bird you could have had right there. He said, if you would have been in that hole. So I said, you know what? Maybe all those good deeds and those experiences I've had there, maybe I'll get like a hybrid band or something crazy that all waterfowl guys want to get. But I'm still waiting, man, for it.
No, it'll come one day, right?
I hope it does.
Yeah, pintails, widgeon, tons of widgeon, a lot of teal, tons of teal, a lot of spoonbills, tons of spoonbills where I hunt at least. In fact, I've come to love the spoonbill, right? The old Hollywood. I love a good Hollywood.
Dude,
Most people hate them. Man, I love a good Hollywood. I even buy the shirts with the Hollywoods on them.
it gets such a bad rap, the spoonbill. You know, growing up, we hunted ag fields, rice fields, stuff like that. We hunted a lot of stuff, and we killed spoonbills. That was like, oh, just a spoonbill, you know, no big deal. What's crazy is now I'm in South Louisiana, like East Louisiana, and you know we have a lot of coastal marsh area down here. But even kind of over toward the Atchafalaya Basin, I don't get nearly the spoonbills now. Like I've been wanting to mount a big, beautiful full plume spoonbill for the last couple of seasons, and I cannot kill a beautiful full bloom. I've killed some that just ugly, you know, there's some young, some juvenile ones. Can't get one to mount.
That picture that you saw of me for this podcast thumbnail, that was a full plume spoonbill. Last day of the season, when was it? 2 seasons ago, towards on a WMA, Mad Island WMA. So
that was a stud.
That was a nice one, man.
That was a stud.
Nice. And in that same hunt, we had a flock of about 8 pintails come over, and it was a beautiful morning. It was an absolutely beautiful morning. A front had came through. You can see the pictures on my Instagram of the front coming through the clouds. It was amazing to be there.
Yeah.
Just that alone made the hunt. But towards the end, a flock of pintails came over, and you can see the drakes circling. And we kept, like a bunch of dummies, we kept saying, let them circle, let them circle, let them circle. They left. I was like, I was so mad, man. I was so mad about it.
Gone. Oh, yeah. And you just said it a few minutes ago. If they make one pass, you better shoot it. So, but hey, you got to learn. You know,
it's in my blood to let them work, right? I mean, that's what we should be doing, right? Is let them work and bring them in close, and then you've done your job at that point, and go ahead and make the shot. But
no doubt, they could say whatever they want. There's going to be guys that say, "Oh, screw that. If I got to shoot them passing, I'm going to shoot them passing because I'm going to get my limit." I'd still rather see those feet locked up, down, landing gear, wings where it's when they coming in hard, John, you know, against that wind, and they doing that little shake at the end, trying to slow down.
Yeah,
that I'll take 2 of those or 1 of those or whatever it is per hunt if I could get that bird to commit like that. That's what does it for me now.
And then you shoot and you still miss it. Yeah, I have plenty of those.
Exactly. But hey, the good news for you is you become a better wing shooter. I'm assuming with all them passing shots you're taking.
I don't know, man. I've been hunting a long time, and I feel like I'm pretty flatlined on my ability to become a better wing shooter. But I don't care. I just have fun doing it.
That's it. I tell you what, you want to learn how good of a shooter you are, go buy a shot cam and put it on the end of your barrel.
I've been wanting to do that.
I got that, and I was like, you talk about teaches you some stuff about how far behind a bird or how far ahead of a bird, or if you're just not even on the bird, you know, and you're like, oh, I don't know how that bird got out of there.
Yeah.
Bullshit. If you go watch it back on that, you really see it, man.
Yeah, I need to do that, man. Yeah.
Get you one of those because it's enjoyable to see it. And it makes you they market it as like a tool to help you become a better shooter. And it really does. It really kind of teaches you a little bit about, you know, what you got, bad habits you got, I guess you could say, you know?
Yeah. So we were talking about species though, and you're still going to find your blackjacks and your sculp and ringnecks and all that stuff here. A lot of gray ducks or gadwall, whatever. You're going to have a lot of the same stuff, man. It's not that much different. A lot of model ducks. You know, I made an impromptu hunt on Sunday morning. I kind of wasn't planning on it. Buddy called me up to go stay with them at the camp on our lease, and they were deer hunting, and we had youth veteran weekend for ducks, and I decided to just give it a shot. You know, it's been kind of dry, not a lot of water, but they had this one cow pond that was holding some water, and we did really good for teal season this year, Maddox and I.
I was going to ask you, you said a lot of teal during duck season, so how's the teal season there? I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I'll touch on that in a second. But Sunday morning, I was up against a mesquite tree. We used a mesquite tree as kind of cover, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of looked behind me, and I saw a big flock of bigger ducks flying over. And for youth and veteran, you can kill dusky ducks or mottled ducks for that season. And so it was right after shooting hours, and Maddox and I picked up on him, and he got that beautiful stud.
That was a beautiful duck
with a gold band, man. I had never seen that before. So
yeah, that's pretty awesome. So he's running a tight race with you on the bands. Dad got 2, he got 1 already.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
But for season, man, last year I feel like was better. This year, man, it was just really dry. Luckily, we didn't have any hurricanes. And these salt marshes, if you get a hurricane that pushes through and
Mhm.
pushes into those freshwater areas, it kind of ruins it, right? And so,
Well, I want to talk about that in a second. Actually, I had that on my agenda to kind of, run that by you as well and see what you had to say. I wanted to ask you this. I know you briefly touched on public land, kind of what the scenario is, the setup is, but on like what's the availability of public land in Southeast Texas as compared to where you came from here in Louisiana?
I feel like it's more limited. I mean, on the coast, you're going to have your fair share, right? I mean, if you go, let's say Matagorda, for example, Matagorda Bay, those shorelines, it's public land. I mean, I don't hunt them. I know, I've heard of a lot of people that do, and the ones that do, you got to work for it, right? Because it becomes real boggy and muddy, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to hunt. Um, so that's available. You have several WMAs that you can hunt, and then as you work your way up to East Texas, they're sprinkled in here and there. But I feel like Louisiana had more opportunity for public land, in my experience. I don't know. I've only been kind of confined to this little area. I haven't really drove out much outside of this.
Yeah. How do you think Louisiana's WMAs stack up as far as maintenance, as far as the condition they keep them in? Do you have an opinion on that as far as like what you experienced growing up here your whole life versus what you see there? And I know you got a smaller sample size there, but that's a pretty good sample size still to kind of have an idea.
Yeah, I think the ones that are managed with these lottery systems are well maintained. The roads are really nice. The check stations are really kept up. The impoundments are to me, kept up really well. But they're not everywhere, right? You only have a few of those controlled WMAs. Now you start getting out to where it's a kind of a free for all, if you will, kind of like back home where you can just show up and start hunting. Um, it's pretty equivalent, in my opinion, to Louisiana, the way they keep up with it. So it's well managed, I think. But there's always going to be the goods and the bads of it, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah,
it's pretty, I would say it's pretty comparable to Louisiana.
Okay. Yeah. And you were talking about weather conditions. So like this year, are you guys in a more of a drought situation right now? Is the season open right now where you are?
It opens up this weekend. We're in the South area.
In the South area. So how many areas do they divide Texas up into? Like, because like here we have the East and the West now,
Yeah, you have the South area, which is below I-10.
Okay.
And then you have the North, which is above I-10. They call that the North Zone. And then don't get me lying to you here. In Del Rio, far west Texas, there's a highway that runs up through Abilene and Albany up to the Panhandle.
Mm-hmm.
That divides the North Zone from the High Plains Mallard unit, and I have zero experience there. I told you earlier we're going to move up to the DFW area here in several weeks. Once I move up there, I want to start exploring some of those more Panhandle, West Texas hunting areas, and of course the Northeast Texas hunting area as well, and even Oklahoma. I have some coworkers that do really good in Oklahoma. I've learned that Oklahoma's got some really good duck hunting in certain areas.
Yeah, they do. There's a lot of guys now, John. They're traveling from down south all the way to Oklahoma, Missouri. They're going It used to be Arkansas, and then now they go to Arkansas. They say they don't get the birds that they used to get, and you got guys going above that now. So, but I have a good friend of mine who hunts Arkansas. He goes at least once a year, twice a year sometimes, and it's unbelievable what they end up doing there. I mean, that's enough. They'll harvest in one or two hunts what we harvest, in a season almost sometimes on public land nowadays here. So yeah, the good thing with y'all moving up there is you're gonna have a pretty good idea of what Texas has to offer on both ends of the spectrum. It looks like,
Yeah,
so,
up there has a lot more flooded, not flooded timber, but more lakes and trees and things. So I think it's going to remind me of home quite a bit, and I'm excited to put the boat more to use for that.
That's awesome. That's cool. That sounds interesting. Well, yeah, we were talking about weather, and I had asked you about the drought situation. Are you guys in a drought right now as far as this season heading into it? Or
Yeah, I would say, yeah, man. A lot of our blind areas at the ranch are just dried up. It's mud flats, It's kind of depressing. But and the mosquitoes are horrible. So it's just the weather's hot. It just doesn't feel like duck season. But
yeah.
you got to find water. I mean, there's a few spots that hold water. We've got some rain last week that helped quite a bit. But I mean, it's just we got a lot of work to do if you want to put some water in some of these duck holes.
So these holes on the ranch on the lease that you guys are on now, they dependent on Mother Nature rainfall. There's nothing coastal there,
There's
correct?
some coastal areas that are tide, depending on the tide, and then there's some freshwater marshes as well that are depending on Mother Nature.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha. What about cold fronts? Because like weather patterns like that. Let me ask you that because what's your opinion on that? As far as when we were coming up, you were always taught you wanted to hunt those big major cold fronts, And when I got to South Louisiana, below I-10, and I started hunting coastal marshes, I started noticing that a lot of times here in Louisiana, we'd have some of our better days, and I still claim that to this day that we have some of our best days in the blind on warm front days, like a south wind blowing in off of these coastal regions. What is it as far as weather conditions and patterns in Southeast Texas? Is it different there than what I'm saying? What have you found as the better days and weather patterns in that area for more success?
I think I would agree with a lot of what you're seeing in the Louisiana coastal marshes. But man, I don't claim to be a guru on it. I think what we grew up believing, hunting the fronts or before a front, before a front's coming, just before it would be beneficial oftentimes, but it doesn't always hold true, right? And
Right.
then you'll get a good south wind system that'll kind of stir the birds back up, and you'll see them pushing back up. And I don't know, man. I think we try to put too much science into it. I'm sure a lot of that's true, but I've kind of come to just go hunting and see what happens. I still kind of tend to want to hunt a cold front because it just feels like what we're accustomed to. It feels like duck season or duck weather. It's kind of ducky outside, we'll say, but
More comfortable.
yeah, it just doesn't always hold true from what I've seen. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like you don't put a lot of thought into that. You're gonna go hunt. You're gonna go hunt, and that's
Yeah,
awesome. Honestly, I think that's a great thing. To be honest with you, I like that, and I'm kind of the same way when it comes to it, John, because it's like if I'm going, I'm going. If I got the time off, I'm going. If I hit it where it's a cold front, great. It's more comfortable, like you said. We feel like it's duck season.
yeah,
But I find that the coastal marshes do hunt different than where we grew up at. Definitely they hunt different in some instances, and that's just something that I've notated in my time being able to hunt the marshes on the coast. That those south wind days, I think a lot of those birds blow back in. Maybe out of the Gulf of Mexico, out of some of those big bays, some of that stuff.
yeah.
I could be wrong on that. That's just what I've always kind of thought and experienced. But it sounds like you looking for that traditional type of cold front
Yeah, I
to
mean,
go and hunt.
don't get me wrong. If there's an Arctic front coming in, I'm gonna want to hunt that. I'm gonna want to hunt ahead, just ahead of that, or even after it, to see what happens. But man, I feel like we put a lot of thought into things and trying to figure it out. It's like fishing, right? We always have these ideas and oh, it's gonna be better this day or that day because this, that, or the other. Man, just go fishing
Just go fishing.
or just go hunting. One of the, pick your poison. Just be out there.
Yep,
It's more about the experience at this point than it is anything.
that's right. Yeah, I feel that way too nowadays. I think that comes with age, John. We're getting older.
Mhm.
It comes with age. You don't worry about other things as much sometimes. But
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say one of the things I've kind of changed over the years is I'm less I'm more willing to move around. I have a buddy of mine, you know him, he's from Ville Platte. We hunt on the lease together, and he's a traditional sit in the duck blind and hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's quiet and I'm seeing birds dropping in these other holes on the ranch, especially Maddox, my son, he's impatient. He's gonna go try to get those birds. If there's no activity where we're at,
Yeah.
he ain't afraid to move, and I think that's from just kind of hunting public land. You just kind of you're trying to find the birds and you're chasing them down.
Yeah, definitely. That's
But
awesome that he's like that, man. That means he got that go get attitude. For him, he's mad at it.
he does, but sometimes it bites him in the butt because when he leaves, that's when all the birds start showing up in the blind and he misses out on it.
Well, that's the gamble you take, and
Yeah,
like you
right.
said, you learn from that. Because look, if he wouldn't do it, it wouldn't work in his favor, and you can't win. You can't
Yeah.
win in that situation.
Yeah, so when it
So
gets slow, my buddy said, "Hey, Mattis, go walk over there so we can get some action."
get him, yeah, get the birds
Yeah,
coming to y'all. Let him
yeah.
go over there. That's right.
Hmm.
So we talked about weather conditions. We kind of talked about the outlet, the public land access, all that type of stuff. It's definitely different than Louisiana. I'll say that, John. It's very interesting to me, and that's why I wanted you to talk about the experiences between both of them, because a lot of guys they may say, hey, I want to go to Texas. I want to make a hunt because this was interesting to me. Something he said. Uh, how is it with out of state hunters? Is that a thing that's an issue or a topic of discussion when it comes to waterfowl guys in your area where you're hunting at?
No, not for me, man. I mean, I think you're going to see more of that in the more uh, destination areas like Matagorda, Rockport, Port O'Connor, um, places where you can kind of do cast and blast. You can fish and hunt. But man, where I'm at, I haven't really noticed that, Jacob. I don't. I hear of it, right? You hear of it with Arkansas and Kansas
Yeah.
and some of the Midwestern states, out of state hunters coming in and causing a ruckus allegedly. I don't know. I don't keep up with it, but I haven't really run across that here.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good thing to have. That means less pressure, I guess, in those particular areas for guys that are
Yeah.
hunting. Now, as far as the terrain, we kind of talked about the terrain. Let's talk about equipment wise, boats more specifically, because I know you kind of made a switch over the years. You had a setup, and then you went to a different setup. Down here in Louisiana, us guys, that's actually a topic of discussion I've been discussing on my social media platforms lately. So you got tiller handle, outboards. You have your surface drives. There's still guys here that kayak hunting's become real big. P-roll hunting has always been real big in
Mhm.
Louisiana through the generations. What is Southeast Texas? What do you see there? What's more beneficial? What do you see guys running? What's more feasible in your opinion for Southeast Texas?
Yeah, I think if you're west, I think if you're west of Galveston, you're going to run into oyster reefs and sandbars in the bay systems. And so, what I've personally seen is, a lot of guys that I've seen will take a bay fishing boat, like a lot of people use cat hulls here, catamaran hulls,
Yeah.
like a tunnel hull, and they'll use their normal bait, their bait fishing setup, and then they'll park it, like I said, and they'll walk out to their spot or they'll kayak to their spot. Um, if you're east of Galveston, like Anahuac, heading towards Port Arthur and all that, where it's a bit more muddy, Sabine, where it's a bit more muddy, Marshes, then you'll see your typical flat bottoms with surface drives, mud motors, outboard motors, smaller, 25s or 15s, uh, John boats, normal rigs like we used to see, right?
Hmm.
So it's a mix, but it's also in the bay system. The more south you go, it gets more sandy and clear. The more east you go, it gets more chocolatey, muddy, kind of like what you see back home in Louisiana.
Yeah.
I used to have a typical Mills Lake Special John boat, 12
Hmm.
foot, nothing with a 25 on the back. Then I went to a 15 semi V, 15-foot semi V with a Yamaha 25 on the back. You've hunted out of that boat.
Yep.
And then when I moved here, I kind of got out of duck hunting for several years. Started training jujitsu really heavily, and I kind of fell away from hunting and fishing, and then finally kind of got back into it.
Hmm.
But I wanted a mud boat set up because I'm thinking it's like Louisiana. Well, I was wrong because where I live at and hunt at, it was mostly sandbars and oyster reefs and stuff like that. And so learned the hard way that you can have a flat bottom mud boat with a surface drive and you'll get stuck really quick. So I've been seeing your videos about the tiller handles with the outboards, and I agree with a lot of the comments. I think if you know the system you're hunting, you can get by with an outboard motor, right?
Hmm.
Just pay attention to the systems, the areas you're hunting. I think both of them have pros and cons. I personally drive a surface drive, but I've learned that I don't need that where I hunt. I like to have it, especially if I'm, up in East Texas on a choked up lake somewhere and it's full of lily pads or grass or whatever. That thing is going to eat. An outboard motor, you're going to constantly be clearing it out and all that. It's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's 50-50, right? It just depends
50-50.
Depends on what you like.
Yeah. And man, I've really been debating myself. I think a lot of guys, I'm starting to see it more and more that I talk to with that whole situation, because what I'm hearing from a lot of guys, and this has kind of been my thought, is here in Louisiana, there's areas that are limited access. And when I say limited access, there's like no mud motor access. So when I say limited access, it's access by tiller handle only, John, or, paddling type, areas. So of course, those areas in the modern day waterfowl hunting age we in, a lot of guys are surface drives or, long tails, but most guys are surface drives, I would say. So I think guys are kind of saying, well, we have a lot of pressure on these public grounds. Everybody's running these surface drives around. And then you look at some of these other areas that are more limited, and they're not getting nearly the pressure. And I can tell you firsthand that I have hunted some of these public land grounds that are not accessible by surface drives and mud motors. And they do offer better hunting from the hunts that I've been on. I've seen more birds. We've had birds work better. They just less people. You don't have to deal with as many people. And I think a lot of people are starting to kind of see that, and they saying, okay, yeah, there's a couple of areas that I might not be able to hunt with the surface drive, but I could get by just fine, and it'll open up these opportunities to me with the traditional outboard again,
Yeah.
So I said this week on my social media, I said I see that as a trend kind of happening right now. Some guys disagreed, some guys agreed with it, but I definitely agree with you as far as it's a 50-50 for most people. You can kind of go either way. You might have to give a little to get a little in both scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the surface drive. I probably wouldn't do it again, based on, because I've learned my system where we hunt at the areas, and I know how to navigate it much better. But I'm going to tell you, I feel more comfortable or confident in a surface drive only because I know if the shit gets real, I could probably get myself out of there. But man, it's a matter of preference. It really is. And the reliability aspect of it, it's all about upkeep. In my opinion, it's just upkeep. If you keep up with your stuff, it's probably going to do good, right?
That's right.
I think in 2025, all of the technology through the manufacturers is pretty much on par with each other. I mean, it's just a matter of preference again. And if you keep up with your gear, I used to not keep up with it. And that's why I'm harping on this now, because back in the day, we used to use our shotguns as paddles. We'd flip the P-roll upside down and sit on it. We just tore up stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of it worked. That's when you really knew what was good or what was bad. But in this day and age, man, if you just keep up with your stuff, regardless of what it is, I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah, that's well said. The technology has gotten better. The equipment's gotten better. Overall, like you said, you maintenance, and that's where, guys, like when they get in that whole debate of gator tail versus mud buddy, go devil, all this and that, and oh, my gator tail's better, and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I've been in the marine business, John. I've seen it through the years. I worked on all of them. I've seen all of them. Really, most of the issues, it's guys that run, and never maintenance nothing.
Yeah.
And then it breaks, and they want to get online and they want to badmouth it and say, well, this sucks. Or, this is a piece of shit. No, you just didn't maintenance it. It's like anything else. It's a piece of equipment. You got to maintenance it. But nowadays, the generations, a lot of guys don't know how to work on stuff. They don't know how to maintenance it. But, I mean, at least you can bring it to a dealer, get them to service it for you, work on it. And you can miss a weekend or two of going out to the lake and drinking with your buddies to get your boat serviced, and I think that helps a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to ask you too, like in these areas in Southeast Texas, like when it comes to like blinds, like hides, is it boat blinds guys are using? Because what you said is a lot of them use like bay boats and skiffs and stuff like that, and then they'll paddle in. So, or they, what's the cover like? Is it sawgrass? Is it marsh grass? Are they building duck blinds? Do guys do like here in South Louisiana in the coastal marshes where they cut cane and they build blinds. What's that whole scenario and setup like when it comes to hides?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I personally like to get as low as possible with a natural cover. And so I don't carry out panel blinds and all that stuff. When we were hunting public land, I would maybe a net or something to kind of cover us a little bit. But you get a marsh chair, shove it in the mud as low as you possibly can, and that's comfortable for you. Get you low with that vegetation and just try to be natural with the land, right? Oftentimes, like on the coast, you'll see people that build blinds, permanent blinds, just like they did back home, and they'll drive their boat out to it, drop the crew off in the blind, and they go park the boat, and then they'll walk back and a set of waders or something to get in the blind. Or like the guys that kayak, they might hunt out of the kayak using cover from their kayak, or get there with the kayak and then get on some piece of land or marsh system and hunt out of that. Or you got the guys that make panel blinds with palmettos or blind grass or whatever. And set that up too. So it's very similar. I feel like for us, the way we do it with limited artificial blinds, I guess it's more natural. You really got to be still, right? So you can almost, we always get into this debate about hides and camouflage and whatever you're using, but it's really, to me, it's about movement. You know, if the birds see movement, you're probably going to flare them off. And so I try to get as low as possible with natural cover and just try to be still. Now, they kind of negates what I said earlier about because we're kind of impatient, right? And so if we're not seeing it work for a while, then we start trying to chase the birds down. But in general, the concept is, you know, you're trying to be as still as possible with the natural cover. And so we don't always do the best job. Like, in fact, our lease, we have a wooded section that has tons of palmettos on it. So we brush our blinds every year with palmettos, and it looks great at first, but then it all dies off and it becomes yellow. So now you're wearing sitka marsh camo but you're in a green marsh, right? So
yeah, correct.
It's kind of doesn't really make sense, but you stand out. But again, it goes back to the movement thing. You know, it could be yellow, and as long as you're not moving,
that's a great point. That's a great point you bring up because, like you said, so many people worry about the hide, which yes, the hide is very important. I've always been big on hide, but movement is what gets a lot of guys busted, John.
Myself included. I do it every hunt, and I should know better, but
yeah, we all do. We all do that, you know.
And the reason I believe in it, Jacob, is because, like I said, for this past weekend, I'm sitting in front of a mesquite tree. I don't have anything, and I've got birds coming over my head just lightening the decoys. Yeah. And so the job is done, you know. It's really, hide's very important, and I feel like back home it was easier because they had moss and a lot of trees and roseaux and all that stuff. A lot of the marsh systems here, it's not very tall. So you had this little, I'm not a marsh expert, so I couldn't call all the names, but marsh grass, sawgrass type stuff, salt grass, these clumps, you know, these big salt clumps of grass. You don't have a lot of cover, so it's harder to hide. And so you have to lean on being still to bring birds in, or have a better chance at least of bringing the birds in.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense, man. Growing up in Louisiana, rich tradition, John, waterfowl hunting tradition, just in general, culinary traditions, the language, the dialect, lots of tradition there. Talk about that and how that shaped you in your waterfowl journey, and kind of what do you see in Texas, in Southeast Texas? Kind of compare it to what they have there. Do you see some similarities? Is it completely different? Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because when I moved here, I left Lafayette, Louisiana, to come here, and Lafayette's got some culture. It just does.
Big time.
And I love Lafayette, but I was very nervous to move here because I thought I was leaving my culture, right? And when I got here, I quickly realized there's a whole bunch of coonasses over here, a whole bunch of them.
They're everywhere, John.
And so the more I observed that, I realized, man, we're all kind of the same, like Southerners, right? Like maybe it's because we're in close proximity to each other, but we all like to do the same thing. We all like to go to the ranch or the camp, go to the cookouts, hunt, fish, all that. So that's where the Lone Star Cajun came from. And so it's kind of a blend of cultures, right? We all kind of do similar things, man. And it's very rich here. Like Houston area is very rich. Down Texas coast is very rich in culture in their own ways. And there's a bunch of coonasses over here too.
Yeah. What's the generational hunting traditions in Texas, Southeast Texas? Do you see like traditions that were carried through the generations in Texas when it comes to waterfowl hunting, like you did here in Louisiana?
From what I've experienced, I think it's more on dove hunting. Dove hunting is really big down here on the coast. Really good dove hunting actually, and hog hunting and deer hunting. You hear a lot of people talk about those
Wow.
big South Texas bucks. Um, you don't hear people talk about waterfowl hunting as much, and I'm certainly not saying it's not there. I'm sure it is there, but from what I've seen, it's not nearly as much as back home, right? So back home it was duck hunting and squirrel hunting, and you had your deer hunters, but that's kind of the default, right? But duck
Yeah.
hunting and squirrel hunting, man, that was a big deal for us.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah, small game played a big part here in Louisiana. Still to this day, squirrel hunting, and not just in our area. What I learned, John, through my years of doing this is just how kind of like when we grew up, I thought it was Evangeline Parish. I thought it was maybe St. Landry Parish, Avoyelles Parish, those parishes around us. But what I realized now is that, man, it may have been kind of in those areas. That's kind of where the heartbeat of all that was, the small game stuff. But since then, it's trickled out like all across the state now.
yeah.
Like I hear guys in North Louisiana tell me that they have a tradition for opening weekend of squirrel season now. Guys, in South Louisiana, Chaffalaya Basin regions areas, which I think a lot of that was already going on in those areas. But I didn't realize how much of the culture it affected the entire state when it came to small game hunting. So that kind of opened my eyes as I've gone through this journey throughout Louisiana, talking to different people and all that type of stuff, man. I think a lot of people, that's kind of where you cut your teeth as a hunter, as an outdoorsman. They either a squirrel hunter, a rabbit hunter. I talked to guys that told me they were nutria hunters, back in the day, their families. There's just a lot of culture when it comes to that. So I always think, because I'm inside that Louisiana box, is like, hey, where does this play into other states? Is it something that you see, not necessarily what we do, but do they have their own traditions, their own, type of stuff that you like? What I'm interested to know, kind of what those traditions are. We talked about food. That's another big thing here in Louisiana. When you go to a duck camp, or you go to a deer camp, or you go to any kind of camp, there's going to be Cajun cooking involved. There's going to be some kind of culinary dish. You talked about y'all have a place in Texas there on a lease. What's the culinary traditions, or what's the culinary type, situation in these camps that you've experienced in Texas?
Yeah, man. I mean, at least where I'm at, it's very basic. Grill, burgers, hot dogs, type of stuff. But it's a very primitive ranch, so it's not a really nice lodge and all that stuff. A lot of these locals here are big into Tex-Mex, obviously. It's a big deal here. Chili with no beans. Make sure you don't put any beans in there, because you're gonna get ostracized.
I was gonna say, what's the deal with the beans? Why no beans?
I don't know, man. Where I work at, I've won the chili cook-off a couple of years with my beans, so I don't know. But in Texas, if you put beans in your chili, technically it's not a true chili. So
it's probably better for the hunting lodge that you don't put the beans in the chili.
That's right, man. It starts smelling real quick.
That's right. So yeah, they don't have. It doesn't sound like y'all experience, or at least at y'all place, y'all don't. But it doesn't seem like. I'm sure there is somewhere in Texas.
Yeah,
Texas is massive. But
tacos and breakfast burritos and breakfast tacos is a staple, so you got to have that. But it ain't
simple there.
It's like what we do.
What's something I also didn't mention? I know in Southwest Louisiana, the guiding culture is big. As far as guide services, guides. What's it like in Southeast Texas? Is that something that plays into?
Hold on a second.
Maybe
Jacob, I lost you, brother. Hold on.
No, go ahead. What I want to know is the cultural guide, culture, as far as the guide culture side of it, is that something that John and them experience, maybe as far as when it comes time to getting a lease or something like that? I'm interested to know what he'd have to say on that. We're going to see. I could hear him and see him. I think he can't hear me for some reason. So stay tuned. I want to see if he could maybe answer that question for me as we get close to wrapping up here, guys. But yeah, one thing I'm gonna say this while he's trying to get his connection back. One thing that is really, I think, from this episode, kind of shocked me the most is how Texas, with the whole public land setup deal, as compared to Louisiana, because man, that what he explained there with the whole lottery system, that is something that is interesting. With them drawing numbers, and they have,
Jacob, can you hear me?
I could hear you, John.
I lost you, brother. I can't hear you, man.
I could hear you.
Give me 1 second to try to get this corrected.
Yep. But going back to that, like the whole deal of drawing for these blinds that he was telling us about and talking to us about, man, that really gets my wheels turning. Is that something that we could benefit from here in Louisiana when it comes
again, brother. I can't,
when it comes
difficulties here
to public land? Yeah. So I'm interested that really sparks my interest as a waterfowl guy. Being here in Louisiana and us talking about pressured territory, pressured public land, is that something that could end up benefiting us as a waterfowl culture here in Louisiana? Is that something what John talked about, how Texas is doing it? Is that something that would maybe benefit us here in Louisiana and maybe make public land hunting a little bit more, enjoyable for all of us that public land hunt? You hear me?
Man. Yeah, we might have to cut it short. I'm not sure what's going on, but if I lose you again, then
yeah. Hey, we had to end right now anyway, John. So I tell you what, this sounds like a really good place to kind of wrap it up. But my last thing, John, I'm going to ask you as we get ready to head out is, what's the expectations, man, for this coming season? Tell me a little bit. Y'all kicking off the season. Are you going to the lease this weekend? And kind of what's the expectations heading into a new season?
Dang, I just lost you again, man. But yeah, we're going to go out there this weekend. I think I'm going to try to kill a deer and maybe get on some ducks if we can find some water. But I don't know. Expectations this year, if we don't get rain, man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough. And we need some cooler weather, too, because the mosquitoes are real bad. So
absolutely.
But I can't hear you, man. I'm sorry. I appreciate your time, man. It's been a good time to catch up and chat. So good luck to you, man.
You too, buddy. Good luck to you as well. All right, guys. Yeah, like I was saying, he had a little bit of disconnect for some reason on his side at the end right there. But yeah, that to me from this episode, guys, I had no idea about Texas waterfowl hunting. I've heard stories through the years. I've heard different things through the years, stories that people have told. Kind of, you see what you see on social media, but you really don't see a lot when it comes to waterfowl hunting in Texas, specifically Southeast Texas, which I was interested in because it borders up to Louisiana, of course. It's in a different flyway, but it's right on that edge of that Mississippi Central Flyway, So I was kind of really interested when John and I had talked about, we wanted to catch up, kind of share that and his experience of growing up here in Louisiana, making that transition over to Texas. And what were the cultural differences? What was the differences when it came to the flyways? What was the differences in the hunter pressure, all that type of stuff, the public land accessibility? I had a lot of questions, and I usually don't make an agenda when I do a podcast, guys, as far as trying to stick to a script or anything like that. But I really had a lot of questions, and I told John, I said, I got a bunch of questions I want to ask. And I kind of made for this episode, I made a little hit list on questions I wanted to delve into, because there's a lot of people that may be, making that same transition that John made. They could be accepting a job. They're here in Louisiana. They're maybe in Mississippi or wherever they are, and they may be moving to this area. Houston's a massive area. A lot of jobs are in the area. And you may be a waterfowl guy who's making that transition. You love to waterfowl hunt. I wanted to be able to have a place and a little bit of knowledge on what to expect. Or if you're somebody who just wants to take a trip, maybe do a cast and blast type deal over in Southeast Texas. You want to maybe go for a bachelor party, have the boys get together. You love waterfowl hunting. You have that common interest. Let's go to Texas. Let's make a hunt. Let's get a guide. Let's go do some fishing, do some waterfowl hunting. what to expect, what the differences are as compared to where you are, and where you typically reside from in waterfowl hunt. So I'm really glad we got to do this episode. I hope this kind of shed a little bit of light on what it is over in Texas as far as waterfowling goes, as compared to where you are listening to this episode and what you're accustomed to. John is one of my oldest waterfowl hunting buddies, and we lost, communication when he went through the military, man. He just told us in this episode he's going to be retiring 21 years in the military. That is phenomenal. I'm so proud of him for that. And he's a top-notch guy, father, husband, just a great guy. He's a hell of a hunter. He's not going to brag on himself, but he is a hell of a hunter. He was one of those guys that when I was coming up and we broke out on our own early in our waterfowl hunting careers, man, we grinded our little group that we had together. And he was one of those guys that was right on the side of me in the blind and in the woods and in the marshes or wherever we went, that took us on our waterfowling journey. We had a lot of experience. We had a lot of good times. We learned a lot of lessons as well of things not to do. And it's great to catch up with him. He has a lot of knowledge when it comes to waterfowl hunting. And I'm really glad you guys got to meet him on this episode. Guys, I can't tell you enough, as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for the support, for the love that you give us as a platform here at Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors. We appreciate you following us, on all you guys that follow us on social media. If you're following us because you came across the podcast and you like what we talk about here, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. I'm so blessed. I can't tell you how blessed I am as a creator, as a podcast host, and just as an outdoorsman to make the relationships that I've made through the years here at Last Stop with all of you guys. I look at you guys as family. I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. I've met way more good people than I've met bad people in this industry. And I know a lot of people focus on the bad, but I can tell you firsthand, guys, there's way more good in the world than there is bad. And there's way, way more good in the waterfowl hunting community than there is bad. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you every time you tune in with us, or you click on a video to watch it, or you listen to an opinion that we have. We do not know everything. We don't claim to know everything. We're just average waterfowl sportsmen, outdoor enthusiasts, just like you guys are, that love this because it's our passion and it's also part of our culture and our heritage. And we want to be able to share it with you and more people, get more people involved in it as well, guys. That is all I have for tonight, guys. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd appreciate it if you like and share it with somebody, one of your hunting buddies, or somebody you think may be interested in this episode. We would greatly appreciate it, and we thank you so much for doing so. You can find us on all of our social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We even have some stuff on X as well, and you can find the podcast on our website, or just Google search us, all your favorite streaming platforms, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and YouTube and Facebook in the video format, guys. Go check it out. We would appreciate it. Until next time, that's all I got for tonight. My name is Jacob, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors Podcast. We'll see y'all soon.